Okay, Tessa. I've kind of been experimenting with a few different things that I think would be helpful to know. Um, I found this font. I believe I was using it for work at some point. Um, let's see, it's Saturday Night Interlock. I do believe you have to pay for it, but if it's something you're interested in, just let me know. I could send you the OTF file, since it is kind of like that rounded slab serif. It's a little bit of a mix of that scripty like font that you've had on your spreads, as well as giving you like the chunkiness of slab serif that you're kind of looking for there. So let me know if you're interested in that, or maybe you could find something similar, or if you think it's ugly or whatever, like that's fine. Just let me know. Um, a couple of things that you could try out. So obviously we have Illustrator open. I just have our 5.5 by 8.5 page here, so we get a sense of what sizing and things can look like. And I just kind of have this screen grab of one of the posters that you kind of had in your pacing page. So to kind of start, once you have your chosen font, and I'm just using Groovy as a headline. Once you kind of have that figured out, you're going to actually want to make this. So right now it's like an editable text. You could change things, you could edit it, but we want to create it into a shape. So that is, you're going to select the text, object, or actually should be select a text and you go to type, and that's going to be create outlines, or it is Shift Command O is the shortcut. So now you'll see they're like shapes, and then if you try to click on it or like go to edit it, it's like just normal shapes now. It's no longer editable with the text tool, and that's actually what we want, because it's a little easier to then edit and manipulate and abstract type when they're shapes rather than like something that's stuck in kind of that text box. So if we are just kind of going off this example, we'll pick up that color. And I'm just going to kind of like replicate this design, just, to let you know kind of like the capabilities of, what Illustrator can do, and maybe some of the differing stylistic aspects that you could kind of bring into the design as well. So before I kind of like start recreating this and kind of some tips and tricks of how to do that, I'll kind of go through like some more easy elements first. So right now we have our selection tool, or like if you hit V as a short keyboard shortcut, that's going to be this one. And then we have this selection tool, which is your direct selection tool, which is A on your keyboard. And you'll notice if we hit A and go to highlight some of the shape, it will only grab those pixels, specific pixels that you highlighted. Whereas the regular direct selection tool, it just moves the entire grouped shape. So if we want to ungroup this, which is probably a good idea, you just select it, go to Object, Ungroup, or Shift Command G. So then now once you move it, it'll just be each individual letter. So something that I noticed, within the posters that you were kind of referencing, sometimes they do this like effect where they grab, let's see if I could find it, like the bottom of the text. Not so much, but basically they like grab the bottom of the text and like extend it, down the page as like a stylistic choice. Even similar to this, and I think you had this in your posters too, like you'll see like this blue or like this pink, like the color is actually being like dragged all the way down. So an easy way to do that is if you're in your document, you select your direct selection, or you hit A on your keyboard and you highlight the part you want to extend. Then this is where you could just hit your down arrow key and hold Shift if you want to make that go faster. Down arrow key, and then that could create, maybe an effect that you want to include on another spread, or I don't know, something, and then maybe you put something else on top, what have you, but that could be an avenue that you could take too. So right now I'm just holding Command Z to undo all of that. So if we kind of want to go towards this look, What I would go and start off with is again selecting A or your direct selection tool, and you're just going to select like the very bottom portion that you want to repeat. So let's say that's what I want. Then you're going to hit Command C for copy and Command Z or V for paste. And when you do that, it'll look a little bit weird because we're not enclosing any of these shapes yet. So if you go back to the direct selection tool, you'll see like this pixel is way up here, so we'll just bring that down. Same with these guys, so it's all kind of connecting at the same point, and that way you really have that look of those bottom case of the letters. And if you want to like select a specific anchor point, you're just going to go back to your direct selection and just double click on it until like one of those these anchors show up, then it should be good. So we'll do that with this one. And if you want to select more than one, you just double click on one, hold shift down and click on another. Then you could just click and drag the same thing. And if you hold shift down, you'll notice that it keeps within the same position, or it goes to 45 degrees, things like that. So if you just hold shift down, then it'll move evenly. And we'll do the same with this. Oops. Put this palette in the way. And then those pink lines will kind of show up, indicating that, everything lines up. So go ahead and group this, Command G, just so when we click on one, the whole thing connects. So I'm going to kind of just find like a comfortable place where I think I want that to show up. Maybe I'll, start there. And then let's just click and drag just a few more. Maybe adding just a little bit more space as we go down. And then do the same thing again. Add just a little bit more space. Maybe it's a little too much. A little bit more. And you're pretty much going to just repeat, doing that as you see fit. And by the way, when I'm like dragging this down, I'm holding Option. So instead of just Command Paste or Command Copy, Command Paste, you could just click on the thing you want to duplicate, hold Shift, and then click and drag down. And these two like double arrows will show up. If you just hold Shift, then it will do that like, it'll snap evenly. And it just kind of makes your workflow go a little faster. So as you do that, just kind of add more space in between each level you copy down. So again, all of this is mostly just using, Illustrator's shape tools, and it's just a little hard to do this. You probably could do it in InDesign, but it's just so much easier in Illustrator because there's a lot of other tools in terms of, typography specifically to kind of give you that effect. So, that's kind of already replicating this look, and it could look different, if you choose a font that's more indicative to this. Obviously, those like endpoints that you choose to drag down will look, differently, just as if like these were, slightly more rounded and more bubble-like. That's what the effect that they'll repeat as. And something else I wanted to kind of show you too is I think for your project it would be really unique to have like the type on a line tool, because I remember sometimes within some of the designs that Victor has done, he uses like some of the text in like an arch. So even like something like this, or what was another example that you had? I don't know, like if this pink, text were to go fully around the arch on the top or something like that. He used it in quite a lot of his work. Or he does like an arch and then squares it off, or like whatever it is. I think that would be like a good place for you to kind of grab inspiration from and things like that. So, or even like how, the text here is not sitting on that flat line, it's sitting on this like curved area, and then this is kind of like, pinched in towards the center. So if you want to know how to do some of that, this is actually where we still want to keep, so I'm just going to make this that blue color. Let me just grab that pink. So let's say if we want to use pink, okay, so still within your text box, we have our groovy text or whatever you want, if you're doing this with headlines, if you're doing this with your front cover, whatever it is you want to say, you're actually going to click on your pen tool here. So let's say if we do want that arch, starting from the bottom going to the top, we could actually just grab our rectangle tool, kind of roughly pick out what we want. And then you're going to your pen tool, add a center point right here. Then this is like a curvature tool, so it just makes, clicking and dragging those curvatures a lot easier. And you notice this is coming to a point right now. All you have to do is just hold Option down and click on the like apex. Of that. So if we want to move this, go back to our curvature tool, then, bring this up to that like half circle or like half arch, something like that. Go ahead, center that. And then we just want to switch from fill to like align. And then in your text settings, so there's your regular text tool, which, you pretty much use pretty standardly, but then there's this type on a path tool. So we want to go ahead and click that. And a path is pretty much just any line, just like the one we made. So you'll click where you want it to start. And let's just say if I want it to say groovy a bunch of times. I actually was experimenting with a different typeface, but you could still change it. So if I want to continue using, I don't know, let's just try this one. I could just copy and paste that. And you'll notice here too, there's a few of these like weird, weird like lines coming here. So these actually are an indication of where your type on a path like starts and stops. So if we go back to our text here, this is where we actually want to move. So it's until you kind of, it's a little tricky to grab sometimes. Yeah, that's where we want it. Or we could bring this back up to start where we want it to. So again, these are just those like indicators for typing on a path where you want the text to begin based on the path that you created, or the, rectangle that we, created the arch on the top. So I'm gonna want that like pretty close to the bottom. And then this one indicates like the end of where you want text to stop. So we're just going to just make that a little bit more comfortable. And I'm just going to copy and paste groovy a bunch of times so you get the effect. And then now this is where we still want to adjust that ending line. Okay, now this is where we could adjust the size of the typeface to fit the full arch. And we can grab this again to adjust to where we want that to start and stop. So now we kind of get that kind of curved effect, and this works really well for all caps. It would look a little bit on the funny side if you used a lowercase, letters, because you have those ascenders and descenders. Ascenders, are the ones sticking above the X height, and then descenders are the ones that go below. So your, Y's, P's, Q's, and ascenders, H's, the tittle in the I or the dot in the I, things like that. So anytime you do any of these effects that I'm kind of showing, it's really a good idea to just use caps and most likely a slab serif of some kind, since that's really indicative to, a lot of the posters that you've been using. And maybe it's, a simplistic one like this or a more stylized one like this or something in between. That could be, an option too. And even like, if you like this arch, and this could even be a really good way within your inner spreads to kind of add to that graphic element. And like how I was talking to you today about like, how could we use text and typography to bring in that sense of color and that sense of pattern that is so prominent on these posters. They're all pretty much done, I mean, yes, with the help of the photography, of course, but like the emphasis of why the posters are so unique is because of the use of type. So I want you to do the same. And, by kind of having edits like this or, things like that representative in it, really brings that together. So I'm just going to make a copy of this, and always kind of do this, make a copy of your work. So if you mess up, you have something else to go off of. I'm just going to, again, create the outline. So Shift Command O. And then what we can do if we want to add more to the effect is we could copy and paste this and, have like more arches in between. Copy, paste in place, more arches in between. So, how already we could already see how like the text is creating this unique pattern and potentially color when you add to it. And it's already kind of giving those same unique qualities that a lot of your posters are portraying. But now you're doing it with the text, the titles that are relevant to the subjects that you chose, instead of relying so much on those borders and like kind of other colors that you had. And of course we could, change the color of all of these. Again, they're acting as shapes, or it would maybe be a cool effect to like do every other, or I don't know, something along those lines to kind of bring in that pattern effect. And then maybe this is where, you could put the designer, photo or something. I think you had that in your first spread, like on the bottom left of it, just a way to frame photography. You could put this texture behind the photo potentially. And it really grounds the image to the background or the image to your spread. It feels more anchored while using this really cool text effect that is so prominent in so many of your posters. And again, like all of this is going to look different depending on the typeface that you chose or that you choose. And because this is like a pretty like squished, elongated slab serif, it's going to, have a little bit more of a modern aesthetic to it than obviously like something like this font. What did I say that was? The Saturday Night Interlock. So again, depending on what typeface you use, it's going to be like indicative of the style once you go to repeat it and kind of like create those like graphic elements to it. Trying to think if there was any other effects you could use. You had like a good direction of photo editing with your designer photo and things like that. So I think if you really focus on making unique patterns with the type and using that as a way to bring the color in would be a really good solution for you. And of course, like if you want something other than the arch, you could do any shape you want, any line, any, so even if we grab our brush tool and just make, I don't know, that, we grab our type on a path tool again, you know, then again, that like follows a unique pattern or unique thing. And if we, create outlines for that and make a copy of it and move that around along the page, or I don't know, lots of possibilities you could have with the shapes and movements, and since there's so many unique like repetition of lines, you could definitely do that. And there's one other kind of trick that makes outlines a lot easier. So let's say if we go back to this groovy text, let's just make this black for now. What you can do is convert it to outlines, so Shift Command O, or convert it to a shape, and you go to Object, I believe it's Path, and you go to Offset Path. So what this does, it creates like an extra line around shapes that you already have. So what the offset does, so it's the space in between the original and then the offset path. So if we hit 2 inches, maybe it's a little too big. Let's try it 1.1 or something. Meter limit. Let's try 0.01 do, because this is pretty small. Okay, so we want to definitely work in like the smaller decimals for this. And just kind of mess around with these settings. Let's go for 0.5. And then you could go to your stroke. And like now that has created in of itself like an outline to like certain things. I know this is probably not the best example. Let's just take this R, maybe that'll be a little easier to see. But yeah, the outline pattern, or excuse me, shape or path, offset path. And okay, you could see it a little bit more clearly here. Let's try 1 round and meter limit. I feel like this is pretty variable in terms of, let's try 1 inch. And bevel, I think we could probably keep round. So again, it's like creating that extra shape around it in the shape of your letter. So again, it's taking like the exact characteristics or if we wanted, I don't know, bring the pink back in or something. Maybe make this blue. Or I don't know. So like you'll notice that this shape pretty much is outlining like the characteristics of the R based on those parameters that you set. So that would be like instead of like taking this R and like doing this type of thing and arranging it, let's just make that blue just so you can see. And like, it's just a more even way to apply. Oh, why can't I do that? Here we go. Okay, arrange back. So instead of kind of like doing this and kind of having that weird like drop shadow look as you try to like expand letters, like this is a actually more mathematical way of doing that. Um, whether you want it this big or you could like bring in the parameters just to kind of outline this R, but it pretty much takes like every point and mathematically expands everything evenly by that like inch or 2 inches or 3 inches or half an inch that you expand it to, instead of having this kind of look where obviously like, if you center the bottom piece here, it's not going to be centered everywhere else because it's not taking scale into effect evenly at each point. So that could be an option, but I really encourage you to kind of play around with the different ways that text can be manipulated as an anchor to any of your images. Maybe this is how you treat like headline text, or I know you had, the borders in your other spreads. Maybe that could be, where you could have these arches kind of framing some stuff in, but I wouldn't say, frame everything in. Again, having that variety in there. But I definitely encourage you to kind of play around with a few different options, a few different colors and styles, as well as typefaces. Um, because obviously, like, this has a very different look than this slab serif. And I believe this is Les Lab regular. So again, I purchased it for work, but if you would like to use that, I could definitely send the OTF file to you as well. But let me know if you have any further questions. Hopefully this helps and kind of gives you a little bit more of a grounding for some options you could have for Tuesday's class. Thanks.